Welcome back. We have not chronicled a single celebrity divorce on this broadcast, but Katie Holmes' widely publicized split from Tom Cruise has a unique component as part of the story, and that is the Church of Scientology. Tom Cruise is publicly identified as its most celebrated believer, and many people wonder whether Katie Holmes is trying to get herself and her daughter away from Scientology as much as she's trying to get out of her marriage. In a moment, we are going to examine the history and practices of the church. But first, Kate Snow reports on former Scientologists who paint a disturbing picture of what can happen to members breaking away.
Katie Holmes is out of her marriage and out of the orbit of the Church of Scientology. But for many who've tried to leave the church, Marty Rathbun says it's not that simple.
In your position, did you ever order surveillance? Did you ever order private investigators?
Absolutely.
To check up on people who had left the church?
Yes.
Rathbun worked in the Church of Scientology for 27 years before leaving in 2004. During his last few years in the church, he says he was Tom Cruise's personal counselor.
That was my majority of my time, and it was my number one priority between January 2001 and February 2004 when I left.
Rathbun says he reported straight to the church's leader, David Miscavige.
I would be the person that Miscavige would come to virtually every morning and say, have there been any blows, which is an unauthorized departure.
Wait, what's a blow?
A blow is an unauthorized departure as somebody escapes or takes off. They're gone. They're blown. We call it blown.
It was part of his job, says Rathbun, to deal with Scientology insiders, those who had dedicated their lives to the religion, lived and worked on church property, who suddenly fled.
We had a whole drill that involved up to 24 people to hunt down and find the person, confront them, and persuade them to return.
He says they'd use family inside the church to try to lure those runaway members back, while at the same time a team of Scientology employees tried to track them down.
Then they would use private investigators who could get you bank records. There were certain PIs who had lines of communication where people were bribed in the credit card companies where they could phone in and get records. I mean, up to the minute, like.
So you could find out where he's using his card. Oh, he just went to the restaurant.
He just went to the Denny's in San Bernardino, right? And I'm telling you, 6 cars would take off to San Bernardino and scour the place.
This sounds like movie stuff. I'm sorry, Marty. This sounds too complicated to believe.
Yeah, I know. Well, you know, that's the way it is. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You know, can you handle the truth?
The Church of Scientology says none of what Marty Rathbun says is the truth. But he says he experienced the church's tactics firsthand when he spoke out against it in 2009. Suddenly, the roles were reversed, and the hunter became the hunted.
Come on, Marty. Got anything to say? You can't even defend yourself on this, can you?
What's your name?
I gave you my name, Marty.
What's your name?
Marty, I gave you my name. Now let's go take a look at the folder.
What's your name?
Why don't you answer his question?
From his front porch, Rathbun filmed this video of what he says was a team of people organized by the church called Squirrel Busters. In Scientology jargon, a squirrel is someone who leaves the church but continues to try to practice Scientology, which Rathbun does.
What are you hiding?
He says it went on for 199 days, the Squirrel Busters knocking on his door, camping outside his home, and filming his every move.
This group of clowns showed up to my house with the uniforms on and the shirts with my face emblazoned on them with the strikeout symbol on it, the Squirrel Busters.
He says they wouldn't leave him alone no matter what he did.
What's your name?
I don't have a name.
The Church of Scientology denies organizing the harassment, but we spoke with one of the photographers hired to film Rathbun. Bert Leahy says he was hired by a man linked to the church.
He said that he was not a Scientologist, but he was hired by the Church of Scientology to do a documentary of a ex-member named Marty Rathbun.
Leahy says he quit after 2 days because of the bullying.
They would say to me and everybody, don't push Marty, but get into his way so he can push you, and then we can press charges and, you know, get him in all kinds of trouble.
They were there to drive me out of town, drive me out of business, and to prompt me to hit somebody so that they could get me arrested and discredit me.
So that what? So that they can shut you up?
Yeah, I mean, in their minds.
Rathbun says one thing the church does not want him to talk about is what he did with Scientology's most famous member, Tom Cruise. Cruise is seen in this video espousing the glories of the church.
I think it's a privilege to call yourself a Scientologist, and it's something that you have to earn. I am dedicated to that. I'm absolutely, uncompromisingly dedicated to that.
When Cruise divorced Nicole Kidman in 2001, Rathbun says he led Cruise through confessional counseling sessions the church calls auditing.
He would come to the Celebrity Center virtually every day during late 2001 for auditing with me. And his kids were then overseen and nannied and tutored by Church of Scientology staff at the Celebrity Center when he had them.
He says church officials suggested to Cruise and Kidman's children that Kidman was what they called a suppressive person, someone bent on destroying others.
I mean, he and I were intensively at it, you know, auditing several hours a day over several months. So the kids were in the hands of Church of Scientology staff, and they were being indoctrinated, and they were reporting to Tom on how that was going in my presence.
What were they telling, what would the staff be telling those kids?
The initial indoctrination of Connor and Bella, Connor was 6 years old, Bella was 9, was teaching them that certain people are antisocial personalities, they're suppressive people, and they started teaching them the characteristics of the antisocial personality.
Like their own mother?
Like their own mother.
The Church of Scientology says no such conversations ever occurred, and that Rathbun's assertion that he ministered anyone from 2001 to 2004 is a lie. An attorney for Tom Cruise also challenges Rathbun's credibility and says it is absolutely false that Mr. Cruise or anyone else to his knowledge did or said anything to lessen Connor and Bella's communication or relationship with their mother. On the contrary, Mr. Cruise did all he could to encourage that relationship. For years, the church has denied using any strong-arm tactics.
You know, there isn't and hasn't been any effort which has been taken to, quote, silence critics.
In fact, in 1998, the church had its spokesperson, Mike Rinder, defend Scientology in an interview with Dateline.
That sounds more like harassment to me.
Sounds more like an investigation to me.
This is Rinder today, watching that old interview with us.
I think I look like a sleazeball.
You said, there isn't and hasn't been any effort which has been taken to, quote, silence critics. Were you lying?
Yeah, that's not true.
Rinder says he, too, has been harassed since leaving the church, charges the church denies. Rinder says when he first left in 2007, he called his wife and 2 children and asked them to leave, too.
The first thing that I did was I contacted them and said, okay, I'm done. I'm gone. I'm in Virginia. Please come and join me. And the answer was, F you, literally.
How long have you been married?
31 years. So I leave. I refuse to go back. I then become a suppressive person.
In the eyes of your whole family?
In the eyes of the church. And then, so therefore, my wife, my son, my daughter, my mother, my brother, my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, all of my nephews, all of my nieces, who are all members of the church, disconnect from me, and they will not communicate with me.
The Church of Scientology says Rinder abandoned his wife of more than 30 years and their 2 children and had a violent confrontation with his ex, charges Rinder denies. Rinder now has a new family and is starting fresh.
How often do you guys see each other now?
Not often enough.
Yeah.
This past weekend, he and Marty Rathbun gathered in Minnesota with about 60 other former members of the church to share their stories. Most here still believe in the religion's philosophy, just not the way the church is being run today. Rathbun even conducts audit sessions with former members, and that is something that's drawn ire from the church. In a letter to NBC News, a lawyer for the Church of Scientology says both Rathbun and Rinder are excommunicated self-promoters who are profiting from their anti-Scientology agendas and are untrustworthy, unreliable, and biased. The church has posted hundreds of pages of allegations against the 2, including charges of physical violence against other church members. Both Rathbun and Rinder say they were violent at times, but they say it was encouraged by church officials, a charge the church denies.
Here's what someone might ask. If you lied before, how do we know you're telling the truth now?
You don't. You just got to look at me and decide.
The church says they demoted you, and then they had to clean up your mess, and that you were exhibiting psychotic behavior.
And why was I assigned by the chairman of the board to audit Tom Cruise during the last 4 years of my involvement at the Church of Scientology? That's my answer. My answer is a question.
And when we come back, what is Scientology? What do they believe in? How does it work? Kate Snow will join us in just a moment. Welcome back. In our last segment, we met some Scientologists who chose to leave the church and heard the allegations of harassment from those who say they suffered because they spoke out against the church. It is important to emphasize again that even as those critics do battle with church leaders, many of them still believe in the teachings of Scientology. So what is Scientology? Where did it come from and why all the mystery? Kate Snow continues her reporting.
This is the birthplace of Scientology, an old house on the Jersey Shore. In 1950, L. Ron Hubbard, a former Navy officer and science fiction author, wrote a self-help book here called Dianetics. It became a bestseller and the foundation for the teachings of Scientology.
Take an individual and put them in a position where they can confront their own problems and solve their own problems and so bring themselves up by their own bootstraps.
Scientologists believe man to be basically good and that his spiritual salvation depends upon himself. The path to enlightenment begins at Scientology centers all over the world. Members go into a small room for a kind of spiritual counseling called auditing.
That is where you actually get rid of the unwanted emotions and unwanted habits, psychosomatic illnesses.
This video from Scientology's website explains the tool used for auditing, a machine with handles which, when gripped, are said to measure a person's emotions.
Used in auditing is an instrument called an e-meter, which really helps a person to locate areas of pain and trauma that you may not be totally aware of.
The first goal in Scientology is going clear, or clearing the mind to be ready for what's next. Once clear, Scientologists believe a person can then ascend to higher and higher spiritual levels. They call it becoming an operating Thetan.
If you want to go up the bridge and up these ranks of operating Thetan 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Kim Masters is an editor for The Hollywood Reporter who's written extensively about the church.
You believe you are freeing the world of negative influences that are hugely destructive. And so you're saving people's lives and literally saving the planet.
Scientology teaches human souls don't just exist in this lifetime, but that they've been through past lives and live on for eternity. The church provided NBC News with this footage showing the humanitarian work Scientologists perform around the world. On its website, the church has posted testimonials from everyday people.
My name is Alex, and I'm a baseball player, and I'm a Scientologist.
But it's a religion best known for its celebrities.
I found Scientology, and that gave me a kind of sanity.
In 2007, a BBC reporter challenged some of those celebrities on whether Scientology is a cult.
It's a sinister, brainwashing cult.
Would you ever sit with a Jew and tell them that their religion was a cult?
Do I look brainwashed to you? How dare you?
It is not a church in the classical sense with traditional worship or communion or prayer. They do believe in a godlike force, though not a defined deity. They don't read the Bible, but Scientologists consider L. Ron Hubbard's writings their scripture. They turn his books and CDs out by the millions. And back at the Jersey Shore, that house, the church website says, is fully restored and now open for tours.
Kate Snow, so many counter indications to me. The celebrity aspect of the religion, the secrecy, all those windows covered with reflective foil, and yet now also the transparency on the web and elsewhere.
You go to their website, there's frequently asked questions. There's all kinds of information and videos. They sent us this book, Brian, this morning. It's a photo album of all kinds of openings of new Scientology centers. They're very proud that they're a growing church. So they're open in some sense, but they made it very very difficult, on the other hand, for us to do this story tonight.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, they were not thrilled to know this was coming.
That's an understatement. In the past 24 hours, we have received letter after letter from attorneys for the church, attorneys for Tom Cruise, family members. Within the past hour, I got 2 more letters from family members of Mike Rinder saying that he's a liar and that what he said to us was false. And they asked us not to run this story tonight.
Of course, because of this divorce case, they are squarely in the spotlight. Kate Snow, thank you very much for your reporting on this tonight.